Welcome to the Age of Warfare, Finnish Story's first truly Napoleonic faction server. No pre-made empires, just players building nations, forging alliances and marching entire armies into battle. In this world, everything is handcrafted. Diplomacy, conflict, industry and war. Every building, every weapon, every regiment, it all comes from the players. And in the middle of this chaos, I founded a nation. From a barren frontier and a single house, I declared the birth of Solenne, an empire not yet worthy of the name. A dream built on discipline, order, and hope. That maybe, just maybe, we could survive the storms forming on our borders. This is the story of how that dream almost collapsed before it began. Proclaiming the birth of a nation and actually organizing said nation are two completely separate things. In the days after establishing the first house, I'd be working hard at laying the foundation of what is soon to be the most war-torn country in the server. However, before I could organize the military, we'd need a stable food supply. I created a little farm and then went to bed for the day. However, when I got on the next day, I noticed the farm was empty. I asked if any of my comrades had harvested the crops, but no one had.
You harvested grain?
No, I came back from the mountain. I noticed it was harvested. I think someone came over and stole our grain.
Not only that, but we soon discovered something worse. Not even 300 blocks from our capital, another faction had quietly settled, the Gregorian Explorat. The Gregorians are different. Where Solenne is built on discipline and ambition, they're built on design. Literally. A meritocratic order of architects, soldiers and scholars guided by the enigmatic leader, the Architect Exarch, otherwise known as No Originality. Everything they do follows something they call design, a grand blueprint for perfection known only to them. They keep to themselves, isolated, precise, almost machine-like in how they operate. But they're not weak. Their influence spreads through draftsmanship, trade, and a very controlled kind of power. Having a faction like that appear practically within bowshot of our border, that wasn't just concerning, it was a warning. We know we were extremely weak at this time. However, this gave us all the more reason to appear aggressive and confident. So we equipped ourselves with the only weapons we had, wooden clubs. We marched down south to greet our new neighbors and kindly asked them where our seeds had gone.
Professional
Primitive man.
we just... I feel like
we gotta start somewhere.
medieval peasants on a witch hunt or something. No, it's not.
Being attacked by some boars.
Oh, run away, you can't win that. You can't win that. Wait, maybe we can. Maybe we can, guys. We got a number of them outside. me and Dang. There's no way we could win a war right now with just clubs. No armor.
We could, it'd just be really hard.
Okay.
Oh, look.
I would be pissing my pants right now if I was him. Unless you're doing business. Okay, let's scram, gang.
Did you see what I said to
just
them?
left one of us behind.
What did you say to them? You find them, bring them to me, I'll make sure they remember what it's like to have hands.
Our little adventure down south, though successful, would have big consequences. At the start of the next day, we were joined by even more comrades, steadily growing our nation. Not only that, but a visitor also came to our nation. He was attempting to track down south to get to his faction, called the Sovereign Keepers of Arms, Valor and Economic Neutrality, otherwise known as the Skaven. They are a mercenary faction that lives in the deep south of the server. I offered him some warmth and food for the journey, and then... watching a man starve to death in front of me reminded me that Solenne needed structure. Real structure. So I went to my study room and formed our government. I decided that our government should consist of 3 public service ministries. The Ministry of Works, primarily focused on construction, the Ministry of Harvest and Production to manage the food supply, and lastly, the Ministry of Mining and Metallurgy. I I won't bore you with the details, but what matters is this. The people of Solenne crowned me their emperor. A real ceremony will come later, but for now, survival takes priority. In Solenne, every citizen is a soldier first. Rifle before politics, duty before comfort. Our enemies may call us aggressive or overconfident, but names are the weapon of the weak. With our new structure set, Solenne began to grow rapidly. I then left to gather some raw resources. To protect our borders, we need a strong army, and need weapons to equip this army. Well, better weapons. Before we could craft steel muskets, we produced bossy carbines. Cheap, fast-firing, inaccurate, and unable to pierce armor. We didn't yet have the industry to sustain firearms, so most of our soldiers still used spears. We thought we were progressing well, until we got a harsh reality check.
Your Majesty, reports from the north. One of our patrols is attacked and defeated.
What? By who?
Scouts say it was Gregorian, sire. They claim the mountain range is their territory, and our patrol was trespassing.
The mountains. The giant mountains looming over our capital.
Yes, sire.
How dare they? Blood answers for blood. We will let them know that the Empire is not pushed over that easily. Marshal Deasy, craft them a letter. They are to abandon their claims in the mountain range at once, or we will declare war and take it by force.
On it.
If it comes to war, the 1st Infantry Regiment will stand ready, Emperor.
I expect nothing less from Solenne's finest. Let's see if the Gregorians can bleed.
It seems our attempts to provoke the Gregorians was unsuccessful. They have accepted our demand and now consider the mountain range as neutral territory.
Damn. In that case, we'll have to think of something else. How about we send them a letter with an offer they'll surely decline? We could send them a request to join the Empire of Solenne as a principality.
Sounds pretty risky. Other nations could see this as an act of aggression.
Yeah, that's fair. However, our soldiers are green and we need them to see combat so they can prepare for larger conflicts in the future.
Very well. First Corps is still filled with conscripts. We'll start doubling the amount of weekly training sessions.
Yeah, that'll be necessary. I will draft a letter to the Architect Exarch of the Gregorian Explorat now. Principalities. To Solenne, it means integration, while keeping some degree of independence. A nation is still allowed to have their own leadership, territory, politics, and culture. However, their leader, the prince or princess, would be considered nobility in the empire. The faction's army would also be integrated into the Solenne's corps system, being allowed to have their own corps with specialized regiments. After a few days, most factions were getting more and more settled. Not having to worry about surviving day to day finally allows nations to look beyond their borders. My information on the rest of the world was limited. However, there are two factions that could pose a real threat to Solenne. The Fetchy Republic of Severograd in the north and the Artaka in the deep south. Both have very distinct cultures, fitting the climate they have to survive in. The armies of Solenne are slowly getting themselves equipped. We've sent a demand for the Gregorians to become a principality, and they said they'd respond in a week. We agreed because it would give us some time to prepare for a potential invasion of their faction. Meanwhile, in Solenne, a second village would be founded, New Berlin. This village has been created fairly close to Crown Cliff, our capital. New Berlin would focus largely on food production, however now it is merely a hunter's camp in the woods. What we did not expect, however, was for an altercation to occur. We do not know if this was a planned skirmish or scouts attempting to seize the opportunity, but New Berlin was attacked. This cannot go unpunished. This was a clear attack on the citizens of our empire.
Artaka offers its deepest condolences for this tragedy. May the perpetrators be brought to justice.
This wasn't your doing then either, was it, Schultzer?
Of course not. You know we'd never. However, my mercenaries are willing to investigate it for a price, of course.
You know, Blobfish, word has it that a coalition is forming to your north. A coalition created counter Solonne's influence. They say it's free territories that are leading this coalition. They already merged themselves with a smaller nation nearby called the Blessed Chakma.
A coalition to counter our influence? These attackers might very well have been from this coalition. Whether they were sent on purpose or not, their mere existence threatens Solenne's right of expansion. If they meddle with us and the Gregorians, we might very well face half the server when the next skirmish between our faction occurs.
You'd better off hiring my mercenaries sooner than later. We might be friends, but we're always going to fight for the highest bidder.
I promise you that Artaka will not send an army to the north during this common conflict. However, our merchants will continue to support your war effort.
Fine. If you'll excuse me, I'll be taking my leave. I have much to think about.
We must call off the attack, sire. We do not have the resources to fight a 6-front war on our own. If our little skirmish with the redcoats show anything, it displays our enemies are already in the Metal Age.
I disagree. We must strike now. The enemy is still gathering his allies. This means they do not expect an attack.
I have heard that the Gregorians have refused to make any contact with the coalition.
They're planning on staying by themselves. Surely they know it's suicide. We outnumber them 4-1. They might have the technological advantage, but we have both the training, logistics, and troop count.
With respect, sire, the Gregorians cutting themselves off from the coalition is an opportunity. They're isolated, and isolation makes them weak. That won't last forever. If they secure allies and mobilize before we do, they'll be able to strike at our supply lines long before the real fighting begins. If you move now, and if you allow my sapper regiments to operate where it excels, we can tip the balance. My sappers aren't just builders. We've trained for siegecraft, fortifications, and inconveniencing the enemy. We can install any reinforcements headed their way, and by the first call, the time it needs to break their defenses before a coalition can truly form.
Spoken like a true officer of Solenne. But let's not hide behind delays and opportunities. The enemy hesitates. We strike. Whether they gather allies or not. Whether Gregorians stand alone or die with friends. It changes nothing. Give the order, sire. Let the drums sound. The first corps is ready for march today.
Another coalition has been created. A defensive treaty between the Knights of the Turnip Order, the Fetchy Republic of Severograd, and the Iron Hills. Combined, their armies could match the strength of our Trant army.
I must advise caution. On their own, we might be an equal match, but what if this so-called anti-Solenne coalition gets involved? We'd be fighting everyone at once. To our knowledge, the anti-Solenne coalition, or as they call it, the anti-imperialism coalition, consists of the Free Territories and the Republic of Commodus.
We should declare war against the anti-imperialist coalition at once. They have not yet declared war on us. Think about it. That means they aren't ready yet. This is the perfect time to strike.
The men in First Corps are now fully trained and ready for combat. The Second Corps is still being filled. However, I think the best training is trial by fire. We can host an infinite amount of training, but plans and tactics will never survive the spark of combat.
Very well. We shall declare war on the anti-imperialist coalition. However, how we will deal with the Gregorians and the other coalition remains to be discussed. So our nation went into wartime production. Our head of agriculture, Lucky, would prioritize mass-producing food rations with long expiration dates. Our head builder, Kane, would start drawing plans for wartime fortifications. And lastly, Kithil of the Metallurgy Ministry would start filling military quotas, mass-producing equipment for the army. At this time, we'd also officially open our stables, with tamed horses being used for commanding officers, messengers, trade, and the Grand Army's dragoons. However, the Gregorians' response to our earlier request would shake the political landscape to its bone. This video is sponsored by, well, you. I'm a tiny creator fighting the algorithm with nothing but stubbornness and questionable decision-making skill. So my Patreon is the main thing keeping these videos alive. By supporting me on Patreon, you get your name in the credits of every video, behind-the-scenes posts and updates, community polls that literally decide the direction of future content, up to 24 hours early access to new videos, and of course, the warm, fuzzy feeling of funding Solenne's war machine. If you want to help me make bigger, better, and even more chaotic videos, consider joining. Link in the description. Now back to the video. A response from the Gregorians. It's finally time to see it. They declined.
I expected that to be the response. The Noah's handed me with 2 fully armored Gregorians. They're ready for war. I can mobilize the First Corps now. We'll need to be ready to march by.
Wait, in a letter they say they're ready to start talks about joining as equals. A coalition uniting both sides of the mountain. What do you think, DZ?
Really? I hate to say it, but this might be the very opportunity we've been waiting for. We could combine forces and pound the anti-imperialist coalition in the ground.
Yo, grab me paper and a quill. We shall accept this proposal. The Creator and the Crown shall combine our forces. We will not be their masters, but their equals. We might not be a nation for politics, but a good commander knows an opportunity when it presents itself. Thus, we officially entered an alliance, naming it the Grand Design Accord. With this, our northern border was finally secured. Meanwhile, at home, Solenne was growing. We'd now have multiple fully operational regiments, ready at all times for combat. We'd host war games where regiments face each other to find each other's and their own strengths and weaknesses.
If they're smart, what they'll do is they'll swing wide to the southeast, up around those bushes there. Yeah.
Oh, one of them just got hit.
Yeah, that was
I
me.
think. Do you see how accurate it is?
At this time, the Empire gained another ally, a nation that would split off from Solenne, named the Principality of Nouveau Acadia, or just Acadia in short. As a principality, they'd be semi-autonomous, being ruled by the Prince Robert. They were large enough to get their own army corps, with the 3rd Arcadia d'Honneur Corps officially being opened. Being confident in our current position, we decided it's now or never. Heeding Colonel Vortex's advice, we would preemptively strike against the anti-imperialist coalition. However, this war would not go as expected. You will have to stick around for the next part if you want to see what happens next. So don't forget to like and subscribe, turn on notifications, and if you wish to support my channel, my Patreon is in the description. And a special thanks to my Patreon and channel members: Game Reese 3, It's Pax, Chris's, Ren Rangeria, Saint Javelin, Schultzer, 5x Twisty, Theo Wenzel, Sebastian Hudak, Kevin Johnson, and Laden.